At the end of the 1990s, the future had a name. It was called the Internet. People said it would change everything, how we shop, talk, think, love. And they were right. But before it changed everything, it consumed everything. Money flooded into dreams written in HTML. Startups with no profits, sometimes no products, were valued higher than century-old companies. The world had found its new religion, tech. And like all religions in their early days, it was built on faith. Everywhere you looked, in boardrooms, coffee shops, television ads, you could feel the fever. If you're not online, you're already dead. Investors repeated it like a spell. Young founders repeated it like gospel. Governments, afraid of being left behind, joined the chant. The air was electric with promise. And underneath that electricity, something else hummed quietly. A pattern as old as human ambition itself. We find something new, we worship it, we overfeed it, and then we drown in it. The cycle isn't about technology, it's about psychology. The names change: steam, railroads, radio, internet, AI. But the pattern remains the same. A discovery, a mania, a collapse, a reset. Every technological leap begins as a tool, becomes an idol, and ends as a mirror, showing us what we really are. The dot-com bubble wasn't just a financial story, it was a spiritual one. It was about belief, the belief that technology could free us from the limits of reality itself. And when that belief met money, it turned into a wildfire. Today, 2 decades later, the world stands in that glow again. Different devices, different dreams, same heartbeat. This time, the future's name is artificial intelligence. Every tweet feels like a prophecy. Every new model is declared the end of everything we know. Billions of dollars chase algorithms that few people even understand. And once again, the message is the same. If you're not in AI, you're already behind. It's a familiar melody, one we've danced to before and one we never quite learned from. But here's what most people forget about the dot-com bubble. The technology didn't fail. The timing did. The hype collapsed. But the infrastructure remained, and from the ashes of broken startups came Google, Amazon, eBay, the companies that built the real internet age. So maybe this story isn't about bubbles at all. Maybe it's about evolution through excess. Humanity's strange way of growing only after overreaching. That's the pattern we're going to explore. How the internet and AI, 2 decades apart, reflect the same hunger to turn information into immortality, and to see how, once again, our obsession with speed, scale, and progress may be setting us up for the same kind of beautiful disaster. Because every bubble is born not from greed alone, but from hope. Hope that this time we'll transcend the limits of reality without having to pay its price. It began quietly, as revolutions often do. In 1994, a man named Jeff Bezos quit his stable Wall Street job. He drove across America with his wife, a laptop, and a vision, an online bookstore that would one day sell everything. Most people thought he was crazy. The internet back then was slow, ugly, and clunky, a place for hobbyists, not billionaires. But something invisible was forming beneath those blinking modems, a sense that the world had discovered a new continent, a digital frontier with no borders, no rules, no gravity. By 1998, venture capitalists were in a feeding frenzy. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured into ideas that sounded futuristic enough to sell the illusion of inevitability. Pets.com promised to revolutionize dog food. Webvan would make grocery stores obsolete. Broadcast. Com streamed the future before the bandwidth could even handle it. It wasn't about profit, it was about potential. If you had a website and a dream, you didn't need proof. You needed buzz. Stock prices didn't rise because of results. They rose because of belief. And belief, once it spreads, becomes a drug. Every new IPO was treated like a moon landing. Magazines featured founders as prophets. Universities rebranded themselves as innovation hubs. People quit stable jobs to join startups that hadn't made a single dollar in revenue. It was intoxicating. For the first time in history, the average person could buy into the future. Online trading platforms gave everyone a front row seat to the gold rush. Taxi drivers were day trading between fares. Teachers, engineers, retirees, all betting their savings on companies whose only product was a website and a dream. But here's what no one wanted to admit. Behind the glow of innovation was a vacuum of understanding. Most investors didn't know what server meant. They just knew it was making people rich. In 1999, the Nasdaq doubled. Then it doubled again. Fortunes were made overnight. News anchors called it a new economic paradigm, a world where old rules no longer applied. You didn't need to make profit. You just needed to make noise. And so the noise grew. Every conference, every headline, every commercial amplified the same narrative. Technology isn't just the future. It's the escape from the past. But in the background, reality was quietly counting the minutes. Servers overheated, shipping costs devoured margins, and companies that promised limitless growth realized they couldn't scale belief into balance sheets. Then came the trigger, March 2000. The Nasdaq peaked at 5,048 points. Within months, it began to crumble. Investors panicked. Billions evaporated. By 2002, the market had lost almost 80% of its value. Startups vanished overnight. Office chairs and routers were auctioned off for pennies. The same media that had called it a revolution now called it a disaster. But if you looked closer, the story wasn't about failure. It was about cleansing. Because beneath the rubble, something solid remained. Fiber optic cables, new programming languages, and a generation of people who had learned either painfully what not to do. Out of that wreckage, the next era quietly rose. Google, founded in a garage in 1998, survived because it focused on function over hype. Amazon endured because it built infrastructure, not illusions. And in their survival was the lesson the world soon forgot. Technology doesn't change human nature. It exposes it. The dot-com bubble wasn't the death of innovation. It was its purification, a fiery reminder that progress, when divorced from patience, inevitably burns itself out. 2 decades after the dot-com smoke cleared, the world promised itself it had learned. Investors became smarter, regulators stricter, and founders wiser. But the truth is, we never stop chasing miracles. We just give them new names. Now, that miracle is artificial intelligence. It began, like all revolutions, with whispers. Early neural networks, quiet research papers, niche communities of coders. Then, one winter night in late 2022, something clicked. A chatbot could talk, reason, create, and suddenly the future wasn't a promise anymore, it was in your browser. Overnight, AI went from an academic concept to the most sought-after religion on Earth. Startups multiplied faster than they could name themselves. VC firms poured billions into AI for law, AI for medicine, AI for feelings, AI for everything. Every website added the sacred 2 letters to its headline. And just like 1999, the world started repeating the same prophecy. This will change everything. You could feel the déjà vu humming through the data centers. The same euphoria, the same certainty that this time the old rules don't apply. History rhymes quietly, but this time the rhythm is faster. Because the tools we built after the last bubble have amplified this one. Social media spreads hype in real time. Influencers replace journalists. Retail investors move markets with memes. The cycle that once took years now completes itself in months. In the dot-com era, you needed a business plan to raise money. In the AI era, you just need a demo video. Every week, new models drop like cultural events. Chatbots write novels. Image generators paint dreams. Voice clones resurrect the dead. The line between creation and imitation is blurring so fast, it's hard to tell whether we're inventing the future or just deep faking it. And the markets, they love it. AI companies, some pre-revenue, have valuations that outshine legacy industries. Data centers become the new oil rigs. GPU manufacturers are treated like gold mines. Everyone wants to be part of the next revolution, no matter how little they understand what's inside the black box. But that's the catch, isn't it? The less we understand something, the more divine it feels. Investors call it disruption. Technologists call it progress. But at its core, it's the same human heartbeat that drove the dot-com bubble, the fear of being left behind. Because AI isn't just a technology, it's a mirror reflecting our anxieties about relevance. We chase it not only to profit, but to prove we still matter. When OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, and countless others race to outtrain each other, what they're really competing for is time, to own the next decade before it owns them. And just like the early internet, AI is both overhyped and underestimated. Overhyped in the short term because not every dream will scale. Underestimated in the long term because what survives will redefine the world. That's how patterns repeat, not as copies, but as echoes. Every era builds its next empire on the ashes of the last one's mistakes. But beneath the data, the hype, the trillion-dollar valuations, there's something more ancient at play. Something emotional, even poetic. The dream of creating something that finally understands us. And maybe that's the true fuel of this new bubble. Not greed, but longing. The longing to make intelligence itself, the one thing we thought defined humanity, scalable. Every bubble begins with the same whisper. This time, it's different. That's what investors said in 1999 as money poured into digital fantasies, and it's what they say now as algorithms promise to rewrite civilization itself. But the human pattern hasn't changed. We still mistake novelty for destiny and acceleration for progress. The faces on magazine covers are younger, the buzzwords more sophisticated, but beneath the glittering surface lies the same story. The story of how belief becomes currency and how currency eventually collapses under the weight of belief. During the dot-com era, people didn't just invest in companies. They invested in the idea that technology could make them part of something larger. The internet wasn't just a tool, it was transcendence. Owning stock in a startup felt like owning a piece of the future. Today, AI carries the same aura. Every startup founder speaks in the language of destiny. We are redefining intelligence. We're building consciousness. We're unlocking human potential. It's not business, it's theology, and the market rewards those who preach it best. The psychological mechanism is identical: hope, fear, and the myth of inevitability. Hope that the new technology will solve everything. Fear that if we don't join, we'll be left behind. And inevitability, the belief that progress moves in one direction, that resistance is pointless. That trio fuels every speculative fire in history. From tulip bulbs to railroads, radio, internet, and now AI, every mania begins not with greed, but with faith. What's more dangerous this time isn't the technology's power, but its invisibility. The dot-com bubble had logos, offices, websites, tangible things that failed visibly, but AI lives in the cloud, a ghostly space where failures are hard to see. When an algorithm breaks, it doesn't crash with noise, it just quietly warps reality. And that makes it harder for us to know when the line between innovation and illusion has already been crossed. In 2000, the market collapsed because investors realized they were buying potential without profit. In this era, we may not even get that signal. AI companies don't just sell products, they sell possibilities itself. They promise infinite scalability, infinite intelligence, infinite growth. But infinite is a dangerous word in human hands. It's the same word whispered in the halls of Wall Street before every fall. There's also the emotional echo, the way culture itself bends around the hype. In the late 90s, the internet was a social movement. People who didn't understand it were mocked as outdated, irrelevant, analog. Now the same happens with AI. To question it is to risk sounding like a relic. The world doesn't reward caution, it rewards conviction. And in that atmosphere, every skeptic becomes a villain and every visionary becomes a prophet, until the market decides otherwise. We tell ourselves that the AI boom is rational because it produces visible results. The models write code, compose songs, pass exams. But the dot-com companies produced results too: websites, ads, data, until the illusion of profitability shattered. The numbers looked impressive until they didn't. The difference this time is that AI's magic feels personal. It talks to us, learns from us, mirrors our words back at us. And when something understands us, we stop questioning its motives. That's where the emotional blindness begins. The internet sold us convenience. AI sells us companionship. One made us faster, the other makes us feel seen, and that's a much deeper addiction. Because when a tool becomes a mirror, it doesn't just change what we do, it changes what we believe we are. The pattern isn't just economic, it's existential. Every era's innovation becomes its own mythology, until the weight of faith demands a reckoning. What we're watching now isn't a technological revolution, it's a psychological loop. The same narrative of human overreach retold through faster machines. We invent something extraordinary, call it salvation, overuse it, and then, when it breaks, we pretend to be surprised. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's how civilization grows, through cycles of awe and amnesia. Each bubble isn't just a mistake, it's a mirror showing us what kind of story we're willing to believe. The dot-com generation believed in digital freedom. The AI generation believes in digital consciousness. Both dreams spring from the same source, the human desire to escape limitation. And yet, every time we reach for that escape, we end up rediscovering our own reflection. Maybe the story of technology has never really been about machines. Maybe it has always been about us, about what we long for, what we fear, what we're trying to escape. The internet promised freedom. AI promises understanding. Both seduce the same wound, the loneliness of being human. The dot-com dream was the fantasy of connection, a world where everyone would finally be linked, seen, heard. We built websites and chat rooms and called it progress. But what we really wanted was belonging. We didn't just want faster communication, we wanted to matter. When the bubble burst, it was just portfolios that collapsed. It was the illusion that technology could fill the spaces between us. Now, the AI boom taps into a deeper ache, the ache of invisibility. We talk to machines that listen without judgment, that answer without anger, that reflect our words with perfect patience. It feels almost divine, a love that costs nothing and never leaves. But what we're really building are mirrors so precise that we can mistake them for company. We tell ourselves that AI will amplify humanity, but beneath that optimism lies exhaustion. We've spent decades chasing efficiency, productivity, scale, and somewhere along the way, we lost intimacy. The digital world gave us endless reach and zero depth. So now, when AI speaks gently in our tone or paints from our prompts, it feels like a cure, but it is only giving us back what we have been too distracted to give ourselves: attention. Every era's obsession reveals its emotional state. The industrial age worshipped control, machines that obeyed. The dot-com era worshipped speed, connections that never slept. The AI era worships reflection, intelligence that resembles us. It's no coincidence that this comes at a time when the world feels fragmented, uncertain, leaderless. When we can't trust institutions, we turn to innovation. When we can't trust people, we turn to code. But the danger isn't in the technology. It's in the expectation. We keep asking machines to solve emotional problems. Loneliness, fear, insignificance. We mistake more data for more meaning, more intelligence for more wisdom. And every time the system disappoints us, we build a newer, smarter one, convinced that the next update will finally understand. That's why the pattern keeps repeating. The bubbles aren't financial accidents, they're psychological rituals. Humanity's way of burning down the old myths to make space for new ones. We overbelieve, we overinvest, we overextend. And in the ashes, we rediscover humility. The dot-com crash taught us that not everything online had value. The coming AI correction may remind us that not everything intelligent has soul, and yet there's beauty in the loop. Because every collapse also leaves behind a foundation, a wiser layer of infrastructure, a stronger sense of what truly matters. The internet didn't die. It matured. It gave us global access, education, communication, even if it also fractured our attention. AI too will mature. It will slip quietly into our lives, in medicine, research, art, and stop being the headline, becoming instead the hum beneath existence. What endures isn't the hype, it's the human need behind it. The need to create, to connect, to make sense of chaos. The tools change, but the longing doesn't. And perhaps that's the real pattern. Not greed, not fear, but the stubborn hope that we can make meaning out of complexity, that we can build something smarter than us to tell us who we are. When the next collapse comes, and it will, it won't be the end of AI. Just as 2001 wasn't the end of the internet. It will be a mirror moment, the pause where we remember that progress without reflection isn't T-evolution. It's repetition. Maybe we need the fall to see ourselves clearly again. Maybe this is how civilizations grow, not in straight lines, but in spirals, each revolution bringing us closer to wisdom disguised as failure. Somewhere in the near future, another startup will rise from nowhere. A few lines of code, a daring promise, a new acronym that feels like magic. Investors will swarm, headlines will roar, and once again, the world will whisper the same old sentence with a new accent. This time, it's different. And maybe it will be, for a moment. Every generation gets to believe it has escaped history's gravity. But if you listen closely, under the static of progress, you can hear the same rhythm beating. Discovery, belief, excess, collapse, renewal. The same song humanity has been humming since fire met curiosity. The dot-com dream burned bright and broke quickly, but its ashes built the modern world. The AI dream burns hotter still, fed by data instead of dot-coms, by algorithms instead of access. And one day, it too will cool, leaving behind the architecture of the next civilization, because that's what bubbles truly are. Not failures, but incubators. Pressure chambers where imagination meets consequence. In every frenzy, there's a hidden grace. We learned faster through obsession than through caution. The internet taught us connection. AI is teaching us reflection. And after this comes something else, something neither machine nor man yet understands. Maybe it's biological computing. Maybe it's collective intelligence. Maybe it's something quieter, something human we forgot how to measure. What matters isn't predicting the next bubble, it's recognizing the rhythm when it starts again, that familiar blend of hope and hubris. It will come wrapped in new words: decentralization, consciousness, quantum, synthetic life. But beneath those words will live the same hunger, the need to break the limits of what it means to be human, and the shock when we discover that every boundary we cross only redraws another inside us. Maybe that the real plot twist of progress. Technology doesn't move us forward so much as it moves us inward. Every time we build machines that think, we're forced to confront the parts of ourselves we never truly understood, our biases, our fears, our longing to be known. In that sense, AI isn't replacing humanity, it's exposing it. So what happens when the next collapse comes? When the investors retreat, the noise fades, and the algorithms become invisible infrastructure? Maybe then we'll realize that the story was never about artificial intelligence at all. It was about artificial meaning, our habit of outsourcing wonder to whatever glows brightest. But when the lights dim, something enduring always remains. The artists, the thinkers, the few who look at the ruins and don't see failure, but foundation. They're the ones who will build again, slower this time, quieter, closer to truth. Because the end of every technological era feels like collapse only until you recognize it as compost, the fertile soil of the next idea. And if you've been paying attention, you'll know that history doesn't end in flames, it ends in renewal, always. So maybe the question isn't whether AI is another bubble. Maybe the question is, what will we learn this time before it bursts? Will we finally understand that intelligence without wisdom is acceleration without direction? That progress means nothing if it only amplifies the noise we're trying to escape? The screen fades, the graphs collapse, the markets calm. But the pulse, the ancient human rhythm, keeps beating. Somewhere, someone is already sketching the next impossible idea on a napkin. Somewhere, the next revolution is beginning, disguised as curiosity. And so, the story continues. The same pattern, the same heartbeat, the same hope that this time, finally, we'll build something that understands not just how to think, but why.